By now the dust is settled. The death toll climbs. And those persons that are missing end up going into a category of deceased. The Turkey earthquake is a stark reminder and a harbinger of things to come. And I would not consider the earthquakes a harbinger of things to come as much as it is a symptom of an ongoing phenomenon that's currently playing out right before our own eyes. There will be more earthquakes. But the bottom line is that Turkey is highly susceptible to very high death tolls. And some of these pictures may look familiar to you, but some of them come from an earthquake that occurred in 1999, the Izmit earthquake. And the death toll there was so enormous that it defies explanation. 250,000, 240,000 deaths from the 1999 earthquake. The reason Turkey suffers so many deaths is because they cheaply put up concrete buildings. They used a lot of concrete. However, none of that concrete was stabilized with a thick foundation. None of it was put on anything that would absorb shock waves, and they were devoid of rebar. Since 1999, Turkey has passed building ordinances requiring rebar in all concrete structures. However, the existing ones you were left intact were not raised. They weren't done anything. They were grandfathered in and exempted because it's hard to put rebar in a 10-story building that's already been built. So Turkey's has a history of huge death tolls. This area has a history of extremely large quakes. The Middle East is not the Ring of Fire, but it does have subducting faults. And as in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, as in even the Aegean Sea, we have faults that are not as active as the Ring of Fire, but that means they just store up energy and are not releasing energy in the frequencies that the Ring of Fire shifts. A constant shift is a prevention of storing of energy. You release that energy in small little bits amount, you prevent these major quakes from happening. The Malaysian earthquake was not a Ring of Fire. So these faults are subjected to changes in the shifting plates, but because there's not as much volcanism associated with these fault lines, there's not as much fluidity, there's not as much shifting, there's not as much releasing of that pressure that builds and builds and builds and then finally snaps. You may be surprised to see and hear that during this week or 10 days of earthquake clustering that happened around the world, that the Turkey quake just was the bookend to a string of quakes. And as we have shown you, and as you know, and as USGS doesn't know, but I guess they should know by now, but as you know, many of the largest quakes occur at the beginning and end of alignments because that's where you have the greatest change in tidal force, a shift that is dynamic. So we've had dolphin strandings. We had a brief supermoon. Notice how the supermoons are getting less and less? And we have a whole bunch of theories out there on why the dolphin strandings happen. A theory arose, and understandably so, that dolphin strandings were caused by sunspots. Why? Because during some coronal mass ejections, we had strandings. But you know the answer to that. I mean, you must be privileged to know the answer to things that the experts do not know. Simply from watching this channel and seeing the patterns put up in front of your face over and over again. The patterns of coronal mass ejections occur during alignments. The biggest flaring activity occurs during alignments. So if you have a gravitational shift or a magnetic shift that is influenced by a second object in the solar system, one that sea mammals are not used to having affect their compasses in their brains, then you're going to throw off the compass during these alignments. And even people with regular compasses write me that during some alignments they see a 1 to 3 degree shift in their compass just sitting on a table. So that's enough to cause a sea mammal to, instead of swimming past a point, past a peninsula, to swim inside that peninsula and into a bay where its compass keeps telling it to keep swimming straight where there's a beach and not an open ocean. So they also, the people that study dolphin strandings and whale strandings have hypothesized that the supermoons were causing strandings. But we have to understand the supermoons are also caused by alignments. They happen during alignments, especially with an object that supposedly doesn't exist. Where is that object? We've shown you over and over. We tracked it through the solar system. We know where it is today. Its relative motion is very, very minimal, so it exerts a long and prolonged effect in terms of tidal influence and magnetic influence upon all the planets. As the magnetic and tidal forces weaken, the supermoons decrease, the magnitudes of earthquakes decrease, but yet they're still shifting and bouncing and changing of Earth's orientation, orbit, and wobble. All of these causes our plates to shift. It aggravates and destroys the integrity of our magma chambers, allowing magma to intrude into shallower depths. So it's no wonder people associate coronal mass ejections with strandings, because they happen during alignments. Both happen, and they're not cause and effect of one another. The one doesn't cause the other. They're both symptoms of the same thing. It's like saying the fever causes your cough, and the fever causes your ringing in the ears, and that the fever causes the pain in your chest, and the fever causes the nose to clog up and drain at the same time. Well, just because a fever occurs during those events doesn't mean the fever is the culprit, because the fever is a symptom of an infection, and so are all the other symptoms. They're all symptoms of the same cause, and in this case, it's an alignment. You don't believe me? Well, during the earthquake, here's your alignment. We've been placing this planet X in the same place for the last 2 years, actually 3.5 years, and it's moved out beyond the orbit of Uranus. It's now approaching the orbital ring of Neptune. In another 3 years, the amount of particles that are being focused in will become less dense. Its magnetic and tidal influences will become less and less and will fall off sharply. But not before it raises just a little more havoc with our little tiny planet. It's a galaxy we call the Milky Way. So, I think we should name our solar system. I think we should give it a name so that we can name our solar system and have a name for it. I mean, why not? What do you call our solar system? The sun should have a name. I mean, Alpha Centauri has a name, but our sun doesn't have a name. We should name our sun. Then we can name our solar system after that sun and actually have a name for our nameless home in the Milky Way galaxy. So let this be a lesson. Occam's razor is always at work. That's a theory and a principle that states if you're trying to find a solution or a cause to a problem, that the answer or the solution that has the fewest variables is usually the correct conclusion. So saying that strandings, earthquakes, solar flares, and volcanism and supermoons are all symptoms of the same tidal influence not only obeys Occam's razor, but in physics terms makes perfect sense and answers all the questions that the experts seem not to know. But you know. And until next time, thanks for listening.